What is up, guys? It is Trevor coming at you from the Tesla in the FSD, Tesla Model 3. Today I want to talk to you guys about, what do you know, full self-driving cars, right? And who is in the lead, who I believe is going to take the most market share, who is going to solve for autonomy in the most efficient and best way. So yeah, if you're into this kind of thing, you're into AI, crypto, robotics, asymmetric bets in the stock market, anything like that, you guys got to subscribe to the channel, because I make multiple videos a day covering this kind of stuff, of things that I think you can make a lot of money on if you invest properly, right? I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a humble guy on YouTube giving you my opinion, and I like to have debates in the comment section about, you know, where the future is going to be. So yeah, if you're into this kind of stuff, subscribe to the channel and let me know down below how many Tesla shares you got, how many NVIDIA shares you got, as well as how many Google shares you got. All right. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and get on with the video, right? Okay. So as you probably know from the title and from what I just talked about, my personal humble belief is I think there are three clear leaders in self-driving cars, at least for like the Western world, right? If you look at like the Chinese market, it can get a little bit more in the weeds, a little more detailed. You can add in some of the Chinese companies, but this is specifically talking about the Western world, where I think margins will probably be the highest, right, on full self-driving cars. So with that in mind, let me give you guys basically a rundown of how I see these companies and how I see their impact on the full self-driving market, right? So let's just start off first with Tesla, who I believe is by far in the lead, right? You got Tesla, NVIDIA, and Google, right? And I believe that Tesla's by far in the lead because they've got the most real-world AI miles, right? They've got and not only that, but they don't use LiDAR, right? So my personal experience, so this is anecdotal, but I believe FSD is absolutely incredible. I think it's a groundbreaking software, right? And the way that Tesla went about it, from hindsight is 2020. I think it's amazing. I think it's definitely the best way to go about it. But also, it's just it's one of those things where sorry about that. Where like they started off with 300,000 lines of code, right, in order to create a full self-driving software that they could give to their customers to be able to drive, right, and essentially get different interventions based upon criticality or convenience, right? People intervene in full self-driving mode on their Tesla for various reasons. Like I said, either safety critical or non-safety critical. This is basically how you can, you know, categorize them. Okay, so with that in mind, they start off with 300,000 lines of code, or 300,000 plus actually, to create the software. Then they gave it to their the people that own their cars, right? And they charged a certain amount of money for it. People intervened as necessary, and that trained their AI, that trained their algorithm to know, hey, this is where we intervened, this is where we didn't, you know, over and over and over and over and over, to the point where they have close to 6 billion miles of people driving on their software right now, right? Close to 6 billion. And it's been predicted, you know, 10 years ago that once a company got to 6 billion miles driven on with like a full self-driving software, that essentially it would be solved. So that's important to note, right? That they've got almost 6 billion miles driven, and they've got tons of data from all their cars that are running FSD. And yeah, and since they've basically gotten rid of all those lines of code, or at least the vast majority of them, right, and trained the data, trained their AI, trained their algorithms with data from the cars that were on FSD, right, with just a crazy influx of data, right? So that's the real world AI that they always talk about when they talk about Tesla stock and Tesla FSD, right? Is the real world AI, which is definitely important, because the real world AI makes it to where you don't have like questions, right? So that brings me to, let's just say, like the NVIDIA side of it, right? So that's like the brand new, I wouldn't call it brand new, but like NVIDIA has only marketed themselves as like a full self-driving company, I feel like within the last year or two, you know? And that's basically them saying, hey, we've got all the GPUs that we already make, right? We're gonna use those. to basically solve for full self-driving with synthetic data. Okay, synthetic data. So basically, we're gonna create this fake world, almost like a video game, and train our AI, our algorithms, to be able to drive in this fake world, and then take that and bounce it to, like, you know, bounce it off the real world, and see if it works. You know, see if it sticks. Which is an interesting way to do it, right? Because, but the problem is that you never know for sure what it's gonna be like. You know, like there's certain stop signs in Hawaii that are blue. You know, there's just like edge cases, and this is the hardest part of full self-driving. We all know it is the edge cases. It's the march of nines, right? It's getting to the march of nines, because you're never gonna get completely 100% safe driving, full self-driving cars, right? It's just not gonna happen. So it's a march of nines, whether you're 99.9999999% safe, right? Sorry. Yeah, so that's NVIDIA's way. And what's interesting about NVIDIA is a lot of companies, a lot of legacy automakers are, you know, taking that approach. They're like licensing NVIDIA's software and going to start implementing in their cars. You know, I don't see Ford or GM or Lucid or any of these other automakers right now with the NVIDIA software in their car, but they basically came out and said, hey, we're going to try out NVIDIA's software. And to be fair, Tesla has not offered their full self-driving software as a licensure yet, right? They've talked about it for a long time, but they don't offer it to anyone, right? So NVIDIA is potentially, I don't know if this is for sure or not, but potentially the only, you know, you could call it off-the-shelf option for these legacy automakers to try to use if they don't want to, you know, build something in-house or use like a smaller startup, right? It's the biggest company that's trying to solve for it, other than Tesla and Google. Okay, so with all that being said, like Tesla uses real-world data, as well as I should know that Tesla also uses synthetic data. They use real-world data, and then if you watch the video that Ashok Elaswamy posted like a week ago, he shows how they actually supplement their real-world AI data, their real-world data for their AI with synthetic data, right? And the synthetic data is basically, it's taking that real-world data and putting it through a whole bunch of other possible outcomes. So like, let's say in real life, you're on FSD, you get to an intersection and you go forward, okay? Well, that's what the AI gets from you, right? But at the same time, they supplement this with synthetic data where they take your exact data and they take someone synthetically that comes and cuts you off, or someone that runs that red light from a perpendicular direction so they can almost T-bone you, you know, or like there's a multitude, almost an infinite amount of possibilities of things that can happen, right, when you add synthetic data into it. But it's like, yeah, well, like I said, they do real world data and then they supplement with synthetic. NVIDIA is all synthetic. They don't have any sort of real world AI at this point, right? And definitely not 6 billion miles worth, right? And then you've got, let's finally get on to WAYMO, right? WAYMO, which is Google's product, which is a pretty incredible product, but as we know, uses LiDAR, as well as NVIDIA, I should say, uses LiDAR. Tesla does not use LiDAR. And this LiDAR makes the car much, 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 much more expensive. We're talking a lot more expensive than just putting cameras on the outside of your car and using vision only, you know? So yeah, WAYMO, as we know, uses cameras as well as LiDAR, and they're operating all over the country right now in probably like, I don't know, 10, 15 jurisdictions, but at the same time, and they have no one in the car. They've got teleoperators, right, that watch and make sure everything's safe. But WAYMO started in like 08, 09, something like that, as part of Google, and they split it off. So you're dealing with Google here. I want to say Tesla started their full self-driving ventures, you know, a few years after that, and NVIDIA a few years after Tesla. Okay. WAYMO, you know, they got all this LiDAR all around their cars, spins. If you ever go to Austin, Texas, you'll see them everywhere. I guess there's only like 100, 150 WAYMOs in Austin, but if you go downtown Austin, you can't spend more than 5 minutes in downtown Austin without seeing a WAYMO, right? And that's anecdotal. I mean, that's from my personal experience in Austin, Texas, right? And they're kind of cute. Like, that's the vibe that people, like, when you see them, you're like, oh wow, this WAYMO is trying to get around. You know, it'll go into hotels, it'll go into like the airport, it'll go a lot of places, you know, and it'll figure its way out. But it's like, it's almost like a teenager driving, where it's like, it's just kind of cute. Like, it's weird that you would think that a full self-driving car is cute, but that's definitely the vibe they give off. So yeah. What else? So WAYMO, like I said, uses cameras and LiDAR. Sundar Pichai has made it known, maybe a year ago or so, I watched an interview where he claimed, he even, I guess I should say he admitted that Tesla was the leader in full self-driving technology. You know, even though at that point, Tesla had not started any sort of robotaxi in Austin, no robotaxi in California or anywhere else, Sundar had already basically admitted, in a way, defeat, right? Which is very interesting, you know, because it just kind of foreshadowed the future, if you ask me. You know, why, you know, WAYMO is a gigantic part of Google at this point, and you got the CEO of Google saying that Tesla's in the lead, right? You can look this up for yourself on Google or YouTube or whatever else, X, and you can see that yeah, Sundar already, like, basically conceded. You know, it's interesting. But yeah, so WAYMO does not make their own cars. Okay, neither does NVIDIA. Obviously, Tesla makes a lot of cars, and they make a lot of electric cars. They make a lot of batteries. So they're very good at mass producing vehicles. WAYMO has to partner with other companies, and WAYMO's, like, every WAYMO you see right now out on the street, I believe, is a Jaguar, right? And I believe that WAYMO is also partnered with Hyundai, and they're going to start producing Hyundai WAYMOs pretty soon, if not already, right? And NVIDIA has gotten a lot of partners actually recently, so it's kind of it's nuanced, but it's also very interesting that NVIDIA is actually, like, pretty well respected already in this industry, in the full self-driving industry, and that's not even like their niche. You know, their niche is GPUs and, like, AI to make GPUs better, right? I mean, it's just, it's a little bit scary when you, like, it's easy to get you know, but let me put it this way. Tesla's market cap is like 1.5 trillion, and their PE ratio is like 250, right? Compared to NVIDIA, their PE ratio is like 30 to 40, right? And Google is similar to that. It's pretty low, as opposed to Tesla, which is just priced at such a high valuation. You know, there's tons of growth already priced into Tesla. But, you know, it begs the question, why is that, right? Well, I mean, Tesla also basically is the pioneer of humanoid robots. Obviously, Boston Dynamics, I don't want to get too far in this humanoid robots, you know, spot, because it's a long road we can go down with that. But it's like, you know, they pioneer a lot of things, you know, and yeah, driving full self-driving with a Tesla right now with just cameras, I can tell you they can solve this. It doesn't matter if it's raining, it doesn't matter if it's dark, it doesn't matter, you know, if it's snowy, it doesn't matter. If you think about the way humans drive, you know, we use our ears, our eyes, and our brain, okay? And that's exactly what these Teslas do, except for they've got cameras all over the car that are much better than a human eye, right? So they've got 5 or 6 cameras around the outside of this car, right? And they've got this AI algorithm that's infinitely smarter than a human being, right? And not only that, but it knows maps infinitely better than a human being could know it. It knows traffic rules infinitely better than a human could ever know. So, and you can, I mean, it can hear as well. So, like, this car, when it hears an ambulance come by or a fire truck, it pulls over, or a police officer, it pulls over, right? I don't know if you guys have seen the new version 14 stuff, but it'll actually listen to you while you go through a drive-through, and it'll progress through the drive-through based on your conversation. Once you say thank you, or once you put in your order, it will literally go to the next window where you pay, and then it'll do the same thing when it's time for you to pick up your food. It'll go to the next window. So, yeah, the question is, between all these, is like, who's going to dominate market share, right? And to try to summarize this and make it as least complex as possible, you know, Tesla already has a form factor, which is the Cybercab, which is, you know, designed for autonomy, you know, whereas NVIDIA doesn't make their own cars, Google doesn't make their own cars, and Google and WAYMO and NVIDIA both use LiDAR, and Tesla doesn't, right? There's a lot of claims as to why they don't. I think there's multiple reasons why they don't. One is computing power, right? If you're using LiDAR and cameras, what if they don't agree? Or, you know, even if they do agree, it takes longer to make a split-second decision if you've got two different inputs giving you data, right? As opposed to, like, why do you need LiDAR? Like, that's the biggest question to me. If someone can put in the comment section below, explain to me why LiDAR is necessary for full self-driving, just let me know. Because I drive all the time and I don't have radar coming out of my eyes, right? I just really don't see why you would need LiDAR if you've got cameras and a very, very smart AI. Because that, I mean, it's obvious. It's hard to argue that you're going to be 10 times, 100 times better than a human at driving with simply a very advanced AI and very advanced hardware to input data into the AI. So not only does Tesla make their own cars, make their own batteries, has the most real-world AI. So all these other companies, the WAYMO and the NVIDIA, they don't actually have real-world AI. They've got some data, but they don't have 6 billion miles, right? They've got very limited fleet, right? Not only that, but Tesla anytime could turn on FSD for all their cars, and then all of a sudden you've got millions of cars with full self-driving capability that doesn't need anyone behind the wheel, right? So they've got time on their side too, right? So like these legacy automakers, they're going to have to wait years and years, I don't know how many, at least 3 to 5, before they actually integrate the NVIDIA software into their car, and hopefully it works, right? As opposed to Tesla's got, I don't know, a 5+ year advantage, and in my personal humble opinion, on these other automakers and their full self-driving technology. I mean, it's just, there's no comparison when you look at the advantage that Tesla has. So yeah, it's interesting because, you know, NVIDIA just hit a $5 trillion market cap, right? And Tesla's sitting over here at $1.5 trillion. But NVIDIA also has a lot lower PE. But at the same time, if you go out and buy NVIDIA stock right now, it's going to take another $5 trillion to go in that stock before you double your money, right? It's going to take a lot of money going into that stock for you to double your money, you know? So that's something else to think about. It's like, are you going to 10x your money in NVIDIA? I would argue, no, you're not, you know? When is NVIDIA going to get to $50 trillion market cap? It's going to be a long, 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 long time, right? So that's, to put it lightly, that's why I like Tesla more than all these other companies, you know? It's like, I think they just have much more opportunity, right, to succeed. There's a whole bunch of other business segments for Tesla, right? But like specifically full self-driving, I think they are in the lead. I think Sundar Pichai has already admitted that they're in the lead. And if you look at what Jensen Huang said, many times he said that Tesla's basically solved FSD. So the two competitors, they've essentially admitted many times that like Tesla's in the lead, you know? So we'll see what the future actually holds for these companies, you know? I think NVIDIA is going to do great. I think Google stock's going to do great. I think they belong in your portfolio, right? But I also believe Tesla belongs in your portfolio, and I think that Tesla has this full self-driving market, right? And WAYMO will have its own niche. NVIDIA will probably have its own niche, you know? But I think the vast majority of the market for full self-driving cars is going to be Tesla, you know? And I could be wrong. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are below. Sorry this video is so long, but it's just it's a complex topic, you know, and talking about all these big tech companies that have so much going on, you know. Anyway, if you found value in this video, guys, definitely what are you thinking, especially if you made it to this long, 19 minutes in the video. Subscribe to the channel, you know. I make videos like this all the time, talking about AI, crypto, robotics, and just overall asymmetric bets in the stock market, right? So things that you and I could both potentially learn something from each other, you know, and make some money along the way. And yeah, it's all good vibes on this channel. So let me know what stock you like the most in the comment section. We can have a little discussion. How about that? All right, guys, have a great day.